Hey everybody, Mark Fox here with Amazing Prophecies YouTube channel, Forever Free Ministries. When we study the biblical book of Revelation, the last book in the Bible, the last book for the last days, we find several lists of sevens, 7 churches, 7 seals, 7 trumpets, and finally, the 7 last plagues. In this video, we want to spend a few minutes looking at the 6th of the 7 seals, and then we're going to ask if the Bible and current events are telling us that right now, today, are we living in the time of the 6th seal of Revelation? It's time for the world to hear the final warnings from end-time Bible prophecy. Stay tuned. Just before we jump into this very powerful end-time topic of the 6th seal, I first want to get into your hands a blockbuster explosive book entitled Mark of the Beast. Already thousands of you have clicked on the link below to receive this free book. All you have to do is click on the link below, and if you want to give a donation, you can do so at this time. That would be great. But if not, it's not required. We just want to get this book into your hands. It's very enlightening and informative, and it's a mind-blowing topic, very important topic, right from the books of Daniel, Revelation. Also, if you have any prayer requests, all you need to do is to email us at amazingprophecies@gmail.com or call us at 833-211-4878. Also, if you would like to receive a link to a free online Bible course or a link to a church preaching what we are on our channel, a church that keeps the Sabbath, all you have to do is text the word Bible to the short number 74121. Also, you can join us on our Facebook group called The Joy of the Sabbath, and also Memorizing God's Word Together. And of course, subscribe if you are new and click on the bell icon so you don't miss any of our broadcasts. You can also help us to influence YouTube algorithms by liking and sharing this video. So the big prophetic biblical question is, are we living in the time of this 6th seal of Revelation? Let's go to Revelation, the 6th chapter, and read about this 6th seal. I looked when he opened the 6th seal, and behold, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became like blood. The stars of heaven fell to the earth, as a fig tree drops its late figs when it is shaken by a mighty wind. Then the sky receded as a scroll when it is rolled up, and every mountain and island was moved out of its place. Revelation 6:12-14. Now this last verse is very important, because later in Revelation we read a similar statement about what happens just before Jesus returns. As the 7th plague is about to be poured out, which takes place just before Jesus comes back, according to Revelation 19, we find this verse just like this one describing the 6th seal in Revelation 6. Then every island fled away, and the mountains were not found. Revelation 16:20. But what about the first 2 verses under the 6th seal in Revelation 6, verses 12 and 13? They talk about the sun turning black, the moon looking like blood, and stars falling to the earth. When is this going to happen? Or has it already happened? When we answer these questions, we'll be able to know whether perhaps even today we are living in the time of this 6th seal of Revelation. When we turn to the Old Testament, we find that one of the prophets there, by the name of Joel, predicted what we find in Revelation 6 regarding these signs of Jesus' coming. In the 2nd chapter of Joel, this is what we find. Quote, "The sun shall be turned into darkness and the moon into blood before the coming of the great and terrible day of the Lord." Joel 2:31. Jesus said the same thing when telling his disciples about the signs of his second coming. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Matthew 24:29. See also Mark 13 and Luke 21. Believe it or not, history tells us that 3 of the events foretold in these verses have already happened. When Jesus talks about the tribulation of those days in Matthew 24:29, he is speaking of the terrible persecution of God's people which took place during the long, horrible, bloody, dark ages foretold in both the books of Daniel and Revelation. He, papal power, shall persecute the saints of the Most High. Daniel 7, verse 25. Then the woman, the church, fled into the wilderness, where she is a place prepared by God that they should feed her there 1,260 days. And those translate into 1,260 years. The Roman Church was responsible for persecuting those who refused to believe and follow their many false teachings, like selling of indulgences or purgatory or infallibility of the popes. It is estimated that 50 million people lost their lives during the long period of religious persecution. At the close of this prophetic time period, the signs predicted by Joel, Jesus, and John came to pass. The great earthquake foretold in Revelation 6:12 was fulfilled in the catastrophic Lisbon earthquake, which occurred on November 1, 1755. Following the Great Asian Tsunami at the end of 2004, one prominent editor of a leading political and cultural journal in America compared the Asian disaster to the Lisbon earthquake of 1755 and helps us better understand why the Lisbon catastrophe was so significant for history. On the morning of November 1, 1755, an earthquake destroyed Lisbon. It lasted 10 minutes and concluded with a tsunami at the mouth of the Tagus River. Tens of thousands of people perished, and the philosophical confidence of Europe was forever shaken. It was completely right that the horrors of Lisbon would throw Europe into a crisis of meaning, that Voltaire's denunciation of the faith would send seismic waves across an entire culture. According to the book The Wake, a more recent book by journalist Nicholas Schrady titled The Last Day, Wrath, Ruin, and Reason in the Great Lisbon Earthquake of 1755. In this book, he explains in greater depth the impact of this tragedy on the religious and philosophical establishment of Europe, and how confidence in the papal church was so badly shattered by this event. On the 19th of May in New England, in the year 1780, a strange darkness crept over the land, shutting out the noonday sun. Birds retreated to their nests, and cows came home to the barn, thinking it was night. No satisfactory explanation has been offered for this strange occurrence. According to an eyewitness in Massachusetts, at about 9 o'clock that morning, a heavy black cloud spread over the entire sky, except the narrow rim at the horizon, and it was as dark as it usually is at 9 o'clock on a summer evening. This same eyewitness went on to write of the reaction of the people when this took place. Fear, anxiety, and awe gradually filled the minds of the people. Women stood at the door looking out upon the dark landscape. Men returned from their labor in the fields. The carpenter left his tools, the blacksmith his forge, the tradesman his counter. Schools were dismissed, and tremblingly the children fled homeward. Travelers put up at the nearest farmhouse. "What is coming?" queried every lip and heart. It seemed as if a hurricane was about to dash across the land, or as if was the day of consummation of all things. The following night, when the moon arose, it was said to have the appearance of blood. Another historian writes, the extent of this darkness was extraordinary. It was observed as far east as Falmouth. To the westward, it reached to the farthest part of Connecticut and to Albany. To the southward, it was observed along the seacoast, and to the north as far as the American settlements extend. Yale College President Timothy Dwight summed up the thinking of many regarding this strange phenomenon when he said, "A very general opinion prevailed that the day of judgment was at hand. Regarding the blood moon that appeared in the sky that very evening, it is recorded May 1780, the moon, which was at its full, had the appearance of blood. The last of these notable signs was the great meteoric shower of November 12 to 13, 1833. Denison Olmsted, professor of astronomy at Yale, wrote of this event the following year. The morning of November 13, 1833 was rendered memorable by an exhibition of the phenomenon called shooting stars, which was probably more extensive and magnificent than any one hitherto recorded. Probably no celestial phenomenon has ever occurred in this country since its first settlement, which was viewed with so much admiration and delight by one class of spectators, or with so much astonishment and fear by another class. Another writer speaks of the whole firmament over all the United States being then for hours in fiery commotion from 2 o'clock until broad daylight, the sky being perfectly serene and cloudless. An incessant play of dazzlingly brilliant luminosities was kept up in the whole heavens. Another writing of this experience observed, for nearly 4 hours the sky was literally ablaze. Now, when we turn back to the words of Jesus in John, it is clear that what happens after these signs is the coming of our Lord in the clouds of heaven. We saw how in Revelation, the next thing that happens after the falling of the stars is that islands and mountains are moved out of their places. And after Jesus described these signs to his followers, he said, "Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven. And then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he will send his angels with the great sound of a trumpet, and they will gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other." Matthew 24, 30 to 31. So it's clear from the Bible that sometime after the falling of the stars, which as we have seen happened in 1833, Jesus will appear in the clouds of heaven. You may be wondering, how can this indicate the time of the end, since 1833 is such a long time ago? You must look at this in the context of 6,000 years of Earth's history from the time of Adam and Eve to our day. We are now living in the very end of time. One of the number one reasons Jesus has not yet come again is because his people need to fall in love with him afresh and win more souls to Jesus Christ, because this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world as a witness to all the nations, and then the end will come. Matthew 24:14. The second coming of Jesus Christ is imminent, but we know not the day or the hour. So yes, absolutely, we are living in the time of the sixth seal of Revelation chapter 6. Jesus is coming very, very soon. And that means we need to be getting ready. As the Apostle Peter says, to be diligent to be found by him in peace, without spot and blameless. 2 Peter 3:14. Be sure and watch my other Bible-based videos. If you have prayer requests or Bible questions, or are looking for a Sabbath-keeping church preaching what we are on our channel, just call us at 833-211-4878 or email us at amazingprophecies@gmail.com. Our staff is here to encourage you in your walk with God. May Jesus be with you always until he comes again.